I got a view, we have a Jeep, and I think it's time that we have a talk about recovery gear. So stay tuned, guys. Welcome to Rhino Exploration. My name is Zach, and today is that day that we needed to do. We needed to talk about recovery gear. What you should use, what you should have on you, and what else is out there. I think it's an important subject. And if you guys remember my last exploration, the last adventure that I took you guys on, you will know that I got this thing pretty stuck in some certain areas and we were kind of teetering, and it just got me thinking that it was about time that we had to talk about recovery gear, because I know there's other channels out there that have done it, but what is it that you need? What kind of recovery gear should you have at minimum, and what else is out there that you could use or get that would be helpful depending on the situation that you're in? So I wanted to take the time to talk about it. Alright, so first and foremost, let's cover the basics. What is the bare minimum that you need for recovery gear? What should you have on your rig before hitting the trails, before getting out there and exploring on your own, solo, without other people? What are those things that you need to have? I think this is the number one most important thing to have on your rig for recovery gear. And no, I'm not pointing at the KC highlights, I'm pointing at the winch. This right here is my Smitty built X2O winch that is waterproof, and it is rated at about 10,000 pounds. I absolutely love my winch, and it was one of the first things I installed recovery wise on my Jeep before I took it truly wheeling. As you guys know, in Hawaii, yes, we hit some of the trails, but none of them were hard whatsoever. The one down by the beach in the ocean was actually really simple. I couldn't even give it a rating. It would be rated at a 0. You could have taken a car. And when we went up to Peacock Flats in Hawaii, it was literally just a Forest Service road, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and I had cell reception the entire time. But when we moved here to Colorado, you guys will know that I didn't take the Jeep anywhere once I got it until I installed this. And the reason I did not take it out until I installed my winch was because of a couple of reasons. One, that is, in my opinion, the most important piece of recovery gear you need. Two, I do a lot of things solo, so being able to self-recover myself, as you guys saw in my last adventure, is super important to me. And if I got stuck, I wanted to be able to at least be able to pull myself out of a situation. And three, if you're wheeling with other people and they get stuck and they don't have a winch, or they're in front of you, you have the ability to help recover somebody else. Which, if you think back to when we went up Yankee Hill, I was doing that a lot. Not to call you out, Jason, but I'm still going to torture you just a little bit about that. But I believe this is one of the most important pieces of recovery gear that you can have on your vehicle, for the reasons that I stated. As you guys know, in my last adventure, I got stuck. I took a chance on a trail that was rated a little bit higher, and could I have gotten up it continuously? Yes. Was it a little difficult because of the trail conditions that it put me in the situation? Yes. Was I able to recover myself? Yes. And the only reason I was able to do that was because of this winch. If I did not have a winch on my Jeep, I would not have been able to recover myself from that situation. I probably would have had to call Jason to come save me because I would have been stuck there and not been able to move, and I would have been stranded for hours. And at least with the winch, I had a fighting chance of recovering myself, which I did, and we ended up having an awesome adventure and got up to 11,000 feet and had one heck of a view. But why Is it that people still don't have winches? I don't know. There are some people I know that when you first get a vehicle or your rig, you want to go out and test it and you want to put it to its limits and see what it can do. Okay, that's great. If you have somebody else with you, if you have somebody else that has a winch because you don't have yours yet, you're pretty capable of doing things. And if you get stuck, you have someone there to recover you. But if you're going out there and trying to push your rig without that winch and you get stuck, you could be in serious trouble. Depending on where you are, one, it is extremely costly to get an actual trail recovery team that can recover rigs off the trail. It's really expensive, first off. And two, depending on the situation you're in, if you don't have this to be able to anchor yourself to something or to help counterbalance yourself, you could lose your rig. On my last adventure, you guys saw I was teetering. No, okay, maybe on the camera you didn't see, but I was teetering, and if it wasn't for the winch, trying to pull myself out of that situation, but I had that winch anchored, once I anchored it, the Jeep became a little more stable. And I at least knew that this would be able to, or the winch would be able to hold my Jeep in place. Even if I couldn't recover myself, it at least provided some form of safety for my rig. Could it have still rolled? Yes, of course, but more than likely it wasn't going to, especially with that being an anchor to it. You'll have to forgive me out here. There's tons of flies and there is wind noise, but I thought this would be more fun to film out here on the trail versus back in the garage or my typical filming site where I film with the Jeep. So, back to the winch here. With your winch, one thing that you should have is a synthetic line. This is a synthetic line winch, which you can take any kind of winch and put a synthetic line on it. And the reason you want a synthetic line is when you're trying to winch yourself, there's a lot of kinetic energy in that winch line because of all the tension you're applying, the Jeep's moving, and there's tons of tension. If you are running a steel cable, if it snaps, all that kinetic energy is going to whip that line back at you, or the hook, or wherever that area on the cable snapped, it's going to fly back at your rig and possibly damage your rig, and two, it could possibly seriously injure you or somebody else depending on which way it goes. If a synthetic line breaks, that kinetic energy is completely lost. The second that line breaks, it just snaps and kind of falls to the ground. I wish I had an example of it, but at the same time I'm glad I don't have an example of it. Two, what should you have on the end of it? And I know a lot of people love the Factor 55 flat link that just kind of pulls it right up in here and it's nice and flat. I think those are great. I do not have one of those. I just have the metal hook that came with the winch because this all came as one. And I just kind of hook it here off of one of the toe areas and I think it works great. I have no complaints. Am I a fan of having a big metal hook on the front of my Jeep like that? Yes and no. To me, it's no different than a Factor 55. To me, it's no different than the Factor 55. It's just not flat up against here and it just hangs here. Doesn't bug me. There is also, and I apologize, I'll have the company appear on the screen. There is a company that does have a winch or a bracket here that replaces typically your stainless steel bracket that comes right here, that, you know, the plate, and you can actually just take the rope. Sorry, I have a bunch of flies on my leg. Just take the rope itself without any kind of hook, and it just straps there, and it's basically a hookless synthetic rope that you can take soft shackles to and shackle it to whatever to help pull it. And that is a really great option, especially because if something was to happen and for whatever reason something was to fly back, there's no big chunky piece of metal flying back at you or anything like that, and it just makes it for a much safer recovery. But it all just depends. A lot of people still run the hook. I've seen lots of Jeeps here in Colorado. They literally, their setup looks just like this, or they have the Factor 55. It's all to your specifications. Now, something else you should think about with your winch when you're getting a winch or installing a winch is, does your Jeep come with a bumper that supports a winch, or do you have to get a new bumper? This is the steel bumper, the Mopar bumper that came with my Jeep, and it was already set to have a winch. I just had to buy the winch plate that it sits on, and it was super simple. I went online, found a winch plate I liked, and if you guys have seen my installation video of this winch, you'll find that it was pretty easy to install the winch plate. The winch, on the other hand, The winch itself was easy to install. The wires and everything like that I had a little bit of a fight with, as you guys know, but it's okay. But one thing you should look for in a winch is one that can sustain or be able to pull the weight of your rig. So let's say you have a stock rig. Well, if that's all you're pulling, you can probably get away with a lower poundage of winch. If you're going to build out your rig, or you have a full-size rig, you may want something that is more capable and has a stronger pull rate than a normal winch. This is at 10,000 pounds. Is it enough to pull this? Oh, completely. But I know that I'm going to build this out, so having a 10,000 pound winch is going to help me dramatically be able to pull myself out once this thing gets heavier, because it will get heavier. The other thing is, this is waterproof. Some people don't ever think about a waterproof winch. And if you think about it, if it's not waterproof, one, you have to try and cover it up all the time with either the bag that you can buy or something to try and protect the winch. But two, it'll eventually get rusty. Now, don't get me wrong, this will probably get rusty in due course in time, but I at least feel safe enough that this is out. It's not going to get damaged if I do a water crossing, which, as you guys have seen, I have done a couple water crossings, whether it was here in Colorado or in Arizona. And two, if it's raining really badly, damn flies, if it's raining really badly, I'm not going to worry about water getting in the places it shouldn't be and damaging it, because things like this here, it's like a little socket that's waterproof that goes in for the plug. It plugs back in, you have the switch to turn it on off here, and this, all these components, this has been in snow, rain, water crossings, you name it, and there isn't an inch of rust on here, and it has worked perfectly. And I've only had to use this thing twice. Once to recover myself, and once when I was trying to help someone in California. And it has worked flawlessly, guys. I cannot speak enough about this winch. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy this winch. Any winch will do, but this, I'm very happy with my Smittybilt winch. I've had no issues with it. Okay, now we're in the back of the Jeep, and now I kind of know what you're thinking. Why are we in the back of the Jeep? Okay, two reasons. One, the rest of my recovery gear is in the back of the Jeep. I don't have anything special on the rear half of the Jeep, but it is the best place to view this bag. Remember when I installed those Spar-E bags? This is where I have one of them, and this actually holds about 90% of my recovery gear, actually, which has been awesome. I absolutely love the fact that this actually has my recovery gear in it. So this back here, I do have some things in here. You don't necessarily have to have them. I do have some spare rope in here, and I do have a couple ratchet straps in here just in case. I'm not going to pull them out because if I just start pulling everything out, it's going to take me forever to get it back in here. But I do have some of the ratchet straps in my other bin. I do have those in here just in case I need them for something, or it is a great way of steadying yourself if you don't have the ability. And the other thing back here that I wanted to show you, though some will call it a safety feature or a piece of safety gear, to me it's both. It's both recovery and safety, and that is spare fuel. This is a 5-gallon jerry can that I keep in the Jeep. Now, it's not in here all the time. When I'm at home, it's not in. But when I'm on adventures, this is always right here. This is where it lives. I strap it in here with, this is one of the types of ratchet straps that I have, and I just use it to hold it down, and it just stays nicely in here. It doesn't spill. It never lets fumes out. This has worked really, really well, and I've had this since we moved to Colorado, and I love it. You can find this on Amazon. The link's in the description below. And I just strap it down here with the ratchet strap off of the 2 latches that come in the Jeep already that you can use. And I think this is a very big piece of recovery gear that you should have, because if you get stranded on a trail, or you run out of gas, or, you know, Jeep, and I'm gonna say Jeep specifically, Jeep has this tremendous hatred of downhills. Because the fuel sump is in the back of the tank on a Jeep, a lot of the times when your Jeep is at an angle, if you have low fuel, like you're getting lower on fuel, all of it rushes to the front of the tank and the pickup's in the back. So it's going to start reading like there's no fuel, and eventually the computer system will either start cutting in and out of the Jeep itself, or it's just going to stop the Jeep completely because it's going to think there's no fuel in it, and then you'll have to get out and fill it up. So this is a great piece of recovery gear to get yourself unstuck, whether if you're running low on fuel and you're in a Jeep and it's acting really dumb, or if you find yourself, or somebody else, if you will, find them without any fuel because they ran out, or something happened and their fuel broke and they fixed it, and fuel line broke and they fixed it and they lost a bunch of fuel. You're at least able to help them or yourself in that situation. I think it is a very important piece of recovery gear that I think is overlooked by people because they think of it as a piece of safety gear, which if it is, if you will, it is. And you're saving yourself by having gas, but to me it's a piece of recovery gear. And next, first off, I love my racks. These racks, I got them off of Amazon. You'll find a link in the description below. I absolutely love them, and they're just bolted on with these clips to the Jeep. We'll do a review on them eventually, but for now, that's all I'm going to talk about because I can mount things to the outside, which is the next piece of recovery gear, which I think is highly important, the shovel. I think having a shovel is super, super important in a recovery situation because if you dig a tire, if you, for whatever reason, need to dig up dirt to get yourself out of a situation or help move rocks or things like that, a shovel is super important. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a super tiny shovel. I get that. And honestly, it is about the size of an entrenching tool. If you're in the military, a veteran, you know what it is. Or if you've seen movies, you know what an entrenching tool is. It folds up real nice. Similar, but this is just a piece of shovel. But I love having it with me because I have used it numerous times at camp. I've not had to use it to get out of a situation. We have almost had to use it to get Jason out of the snow once, just because he had buried himself so much. We almost had to dig in the hole that he buried himself in a little to help try and get him out. We almost did. We didn't quite use it. But this is very important, and a lot of people overlook having a shovel because they don't think they're going to get in that situation. But there is a company that does make a thing. It's called Dead Man Off-Road, and they make a recovery anchor, if you will, that you dig a hole, put the anchor in there, which is basically, it looks like a big tarp with straps coming off. You stick it in there and you bury it in there. You put all that dirt back on, and you can use it as an anchor point with your winch to pull yourself out. But you can't dig that up if you don't have a shovel. And the shovel comes really handy in pretty much in really sandy situations, or snow, depending. But in sandy situations where you know, you got yourself stuck, you dug a hole, you got to get yourself out. You never know when you're going to be in that situation. You don't want to not have some. But to me, this is a piece of primary recovery gear that you should have. And on the other side of the Jeep, on my other rack, is the other piece of primary recovery gear, like all that, that I think you should have, which are Max Trax, traction boards, whatever you like. These are called shovel boards from a company. This was bought by my dad at an off-road shop down in Tucson. Don't ask me what shop, don't ask me where in Tucson or how much it cost. I don't know. I kind of hijacked them, commandeered them, said, hey, can I have those? Technically, I borrowed them long term. They live here. But traction boards are huge, and they are really good in all sorts of situations. Sand, snow, mud, you name it, they work. But be careful. There are some traction boards, I have seen them, they do work well, but they seem to be really flimsy. These are of a very hard plastic composite, and they do not bend, and they do not flex at all, even under tire weight. They really don't bend a whole lot, which is awesome, and I really like it. Yes, it means they're a little heavier, but I feel more comfortable if I am in a situation, have to shove this under a wheel or want to use it to get myself out of a situation or level out at camp if I want to. I don't fear that the board's just gonna collapse on itself. These are really strong. I know there are some boards out there, they're really flimsy, and though yes they work, I don't like the fact the board gets really flimsy and collapses, and I guess it's the help with the footprint, but I've seen them not work, and these have always worked, and I've never seen a car shoot this out the rear of it, or it collapses on itself and gets folded up under the tire. I don't know. I prefer these just because they're stronger, but this works great. You know, a sandy situation, you buried yourself, use an anchor point, you can dig a hole, put these underneath the tire to help get you out. It works great. Leveling yourself out at camp. In the snow, you saw in my adventure on Yankee Hill, Jason tried using his, and it was one of those situations where it kind of collapsed on itself, and he had traction, but he just slipped right off and back into the hole that he had already made himself, because the board didn't exactly work the way it should have, but that's okay. He still had it, and we eventually were able to use those in conjunction with the winch to help pull himself out, which works awesome. And in a muddy situation, sometimes this is the best thing to use if you are just buried in mud. Kind of like sand, you know, it becomes difficult, but in a muddy situation, mud typically grabs hold of your back wheels or the front of your wheels, and having something to help just give you traction to help pull yourself up, it works great. But to me, this is the other piece of primary gear you should have. Do you have to have it? No, you can get away with it not having it, but to me, I think this is very important to have. And then the next piece, I think is more important than these, than the boards right there, is in my box. And this, as you guys know, is kind of my recovery box, survival era box that it's in the Jeep until I have my storage system built. But it is in this bag. And they make various different types of this product. This is just the one I have. It actually did come with the Jeep, but it is a strap, and this is not just any strap, this is actually a tree strap. You can see this little gray part here, it goes around a tree and it helps get you out of situations. I used this a ton in my last adventure because this is my tree strap. You can use this as a pull strap to pull yourself out with another rig. This is a great anchor point. As you guys saw, tree strap, anchor point, something. This is more of a universal strap that is also a tree strap. That is highly, highly important to have. You don't want to take your winch line and just wrap it around a tree. Though it works, you would actually damage the tree. And that's not really cool. When I was out on the trail on the last adventure and had to recover myself, I knew what trees were great anchor points because somebody had just wrapped a line around the tree and it really damaged the tree. You could tell that there were scarring within the tree. Where when I used this, I had zero scarring of the tree. It didn't even look like I was there. And this just is great because it just helps with the tension. You can make this, you know, you wrap it around the tree. It gives you some length between you and the tree so you don't have to try and pull the winch line just as far. And this just works amazingly, guys. And I had to use this with Jason. Or actually, I didn't use mine. Jason had his own. He had a version that, you know, Factor 55 had, that same exact size, same setup. I think his was just longer, like he had just a little more length than I do. But to me, that is a super, super important feature that goes along with the winch. A winch itself is great. You can anchor yourself off of things, but if you don't have a strap or a tree strap, something like that, you one, damage the environment, but two, you put more tension on that strap or on that line because you got to wrap it around something. So there's more of a chance of it could break versus tree strap around a tree. You're not hurting the line, and then you hook that to it, and now you have something with more tension. The tree strap is highly, highly important to me, and everyone should have. Welcome back to the view. It's gorgeous, ain't it? So those are my primary things that I think everybody should have on them for recovery gear. And there are many other options out there. Like, there are many things you can add to it. Like I said, the dead man anchor is one. There's also another form of anchor that kind of looks like a shovel head that you can anchor into the ground, and you can hook a winch to it and pull yourself out, and it just kind of holds yourself there. That is a great option. It's bigger, bulkier, and heavier, but it is an option that you can have. There are pulley systems that you can purchase from either Factor 55, which is not a sponsor of the channel, by the way. They are known for their recovery gear. They have different pulley systems you can use that helps on the winch line that, basically, more pulleys makes the weight seem less. So you can have some of those systems. There's all sorts of different things out there, guys, that you can use as recovery gear to help get you out of situations, you know, besides just trying to drop the air pressure more and throttle through it. It's not always an option, but you should have some form of recovery gear, especially a winch and tree strap, guys. At minimum, have those two things, because you are going to be able to get yourself out. I keep mentioning it because I was just in that situation on my last adventure. If you get yourself stuck and you are by yourself, if you don't have phone service, you got a long walk ahead of you. Or if you don't have some form of Garmin inReach, which is another piece of great safety and recovery gear, is some form of satellite communication system. I personally don't have one. I haven't pulled the trigger yet to buy one, and honestly, I'm not going to yet. Once I get Jeep done more with some other things, then I'll go ahead and purchase that. To me, yes, it's important to have, but I'm not afraid of trotting down the trail to find signal. And I've had way too much training and survival to truly need satellite comms at the moment. But one day I will. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that's why I don't have one. But that is another great piece of equipment. But otherwise, at minimum, have a winch and a tree strap, guys, so you can get yourself out. You don't want to find yourself in that situation and be sitting there going, well, crap. What am I going to do? Or be in such a situation that, you know, your rig could be completely gone and it cost you a lot of money. So thank you guys for joining me out here on the trail. It's been awesome discussing this with you guys, and I hope you found it informational. If you haven't checked out any of the other videos, go ahead, check them out. They are really fun. I really enjoy bringing you guys on adventures, and I do other product reviews. If you haven't checked out some of our other social media sites, go ahead. The links are in the description below. Subscribe. Hit that subscription button. I have a goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and you guys is what makes it happen. And you guys are helping me. We're slowly but surely getting there. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time out on the trail.